Welcome once again to this session. This is the Way Network, and we want to show our appreciation and our thanks to all our viewers all over the globe. We say thank you for your support, for your time, for your audience, and for everything that you've been doing to make sure this message gets out to people. I will encourage you to subscribe and recommend other people to subscribe so that we can reach out to vast number of people, so that we get more people to the path of truth and the path of light, so that our world become a better place. So many often I hear a lot of people complain, this person is bad, this person has cheated me, this person has done that, I gave money to this person to buy something for me, the person ran away with the money. I asked this person to do this for me, the person didn't do it. And we, most often than not, I hear more people complain about people's ill characters. But the issue is, it is not the people's fault, because our system is designing people and taking them off the course of their personality and adopting other ways of life which contradicts the norm and the laws of nature. And the only way we can help as a people is to take them through the road of correction or the ways of correction, so as they'll be reconscientized and come to that realization of the right path, so as they can live according to the laws of nature and the laws of the environment, so that peacefully we can cohabit for a collective good and well-being of humanity and the world at large. And one of the things you can do, if you want to see some of these ill characters and wrong characters suppressed or kept or brought to its lowest exhibition, is to spread the message, recommend the good message to people, so that they begin to listen. Because a lot of people have problems in this world, and we, from our small corner, we are doing what we can do to help people, to help humanity. We have been called to do this, so we do it without any ulterior motive. What you can also do to help is to also recommend to people, tell people of the good news, tell people to come and hear that which will bring them some level of benefit and transformation in their lives, so that the stress, the pain, the agony, the lies, the marriage style problems, the work problems, the family problems, and all forms of problems that we are confronted with will be brought down to the barest minimum. We are not saying it's going to vanish to thin air, but what I'm trying to say, when you become aware, when you become knowledgeable, when you become informed of your situation and know who you are able to have control over situation. You see, because the point is that the afflictions will not go. The afflictions will keep coming, but the issue is, either the affliction will overtake you and overcome you, or you overtake the affliction and overcome the affliction. This is where the difference is. And to be able to overcome the afflictions of life, you should be knowledgeable, you should be informed, you should be well abreast with yourself, know who you are. And that is why we keep telling people to realize themselves, come to that awareness of that self-realization. Because once you realize who you are, you will be able to harness all the necessary intelligences, all the necessary understanding, all the necessary clarity in order to live this life peacefully and with ease. But if you do not realize who you are, you will live a life of confusion, a life of misunderstanding, a life of chaos, and everything surrounding you will be up and down. Your marriage will be in chaotic environment. Your children will live lives that are not so pleasing to you. You lose control over everything around you and in you, and life will become a burden to you. But truly speaking, life is something which is very, very enjoyable, because when you look at the phenomena of creation, you realize that the universal intelligence created life that human beings will come to enjoy. We need to enjoy life, not to endure life. Unfortunately, many of us are enduring life because we have lost touch with ourselves, and we have lost track of the purpose why we exist. Unfortunately, I have noticed there are a lot of teachings going out there. Some of them people send to me, they will ask questions, I need to clarify things and all those things. Especially when it comes to the self. You see, when it comes to the self, everybody is trying to talk about the self. I've seen a lot of spiritual people who try to talk about the self, try to educate people about the self. And in their effort of trying to educate people about the self, the people end up becoming more confused. Because the point is, you can never talk about something that you yourself you have not realized. Because we speak of what you know and testify of our experience. So I always tell people that if the person cannot describe how the self look like, and the person is unable to prove to you to see that self in your lifetime, don't waste your time following that person. It's book knowledge. The person is propounding. You see, because there's a statement in the Bible that I say some people preach Christ out of envy. Others preach Christ out of selfish gain. But we preach Christ unto salvation. So there are people who are preaching Christ because other people are preaching Christ and they also want to do something for others to see that they are also there. And there are those who are preaching Christ because they want to get something for themselves. And there are those who are preaching Christ in such a way that the people will realize the Christ and have liberation. So if somebody is preaching Christ, the person should be able to prove that Christ to you, and that person should be able to give you that liberation you are looking for. Likewise, I will bring it in our realization fraternity. There are people who are preaching self-realization out of envy. Others too are preaching self-realization out of personal gain. And there are those who are preaching self-realization into realizing it for liberation. And these are the three categories of people talking about self-realization. So I always tell when people call me and then they ask questions, they are confused, and I get like, I say, look, anytime somebody is talking to about self-realization and you have the opportunity to ask the person question, the first question you need to ask the person is that, how does the self look like? Well, if the person has been able to realize himself or has been able to realize the self, the person should be able to describe what that self look like. You see, most of the time when I listen to people talking about the self, they interchange purpose, finding your purpose in life, in Krabia, finding your destiny with self. But the destiny has nothing to do with the self. Because the destiny lies in what we call the personality. Your personality has nothing to do with yourself. And that's the reason why I've taken the time to make this video, because I've received a lot of comments, a lot of questions out there. And I feel there will be much more people who may not even know me who are having that confusion as to what that issue is about. That's why I want to treat about the self. What is the real self? When they say the self, what is it? And how does it look like? And how can it harness the self? I know maybe by the time I finish, others may pick up the video and then make their own extras out of it and then begin to talk about how the self look like. But the truth of the matter is that if the person is able to describe the self to you, I tell them that ask the person if he can prove the self to you, that self you will describe. If he or she can prove the self to you, because I have listened to a lot of people who talk about the self, and when you listen to them, they don't even know who they are. They've not realized themselves, and yet they're talking about realizing themselves, knowing who you are. Because how possible it is that on one breath somebody is talking about elementals as a way of life, and then one breath the person is talking about realizing yourself? Because it's very contradictory, and I try to very hard to understand the position of such people. That one person is talking about herbalism as a means of realizing the self. That you can use herbs as a way of realizing who you are. It is absolutely a lie. Anybody that tells you that you can use the herbs to know who you are, you can use elementals to know who you are, it is absolutely a lie. Because the truth of the matter is that self-realization is independent of anything material. Because the self itself is not a constitution of the four elements. And this is what people doesn't realize. And what they do is that they assume the personality, which is the constitution of the four elements, as the self. So your purpose, your destiny, what they call Nkrabia, and all those things, they conclude that by you discovering your purpose or your destiny, you have discovered yourself. That's not true. Well, the personality is within the four elements, is caged within the four elements. And within the personality, you would identify your purpose. And the purpose and your personality are under the tutelage, let me use the word tutelage, or control of the self. Because the self transcends anything which is elemental. Be it the four elements, the herb element, whatever, the plant consciousness, the mineral consciousness, the animal consciousness. It transcends all the dimensions. So we must understand that the self that we are talking about, it is not the self that they are talking about. We are talking about the real self, the real you. What actually constitutes your divine nature. Because as you sit down, you are a tripartite being, you are a trinium being. You have the higher, the medium, and the low. The spirit, the soul, and the body. When we talk about the body, most of the time people constitute the body as this physical matter. But the body is not physical matter. When you talk about the body, you are talking about the senses that constitute, the energy that constitute the material movement, which are the five senses. That is the body. This is just matter. This is just matter. It has width and occupied space. But this matter operates through senses, and that senses activate what we call the material world. That is the sense of touch, smell, and all those things. And at the apex of that sense is the mind. We have the lower mind and then the higher mind. At the apex of that sense is the mind. Now, and from the mind is the gateway to the self, which is the living soul. Now, so from the mind and below, that structure of the mind and below, the intellect, the emotion, and the senses is what we call the personality. And this is what people think that once you're able to grasp that expanse, they call it as self. But that is not the self. But the self is independent. I repeat again, the self is independent of any form of material mediumship. So, no, if somebody wants to help you to realize yourself and is using any form of material medium, the person is helping you to realize your personality. Yeah, so we can do some herb bath, you can do some herb juice to drink, you can do some spiritual souls, use some perfumes and all. All those things are your personality. And the day you transcend this physical body, you realize that your personality will die, the body will die, the mind will die. We are speaking of what we know, what you have experienced in this physical body, not when you are dying. And these things I am talking about are things that people who have gone through near-death experience, out of the body near-death experience, have come to testify. That when you transcend the body, when the self you are talking about transcends the body, transcends the personality, you realize that the body is dead, the personality is dead, the mind is dead. You leave all those things behind because that is not you. So I want you to understand that what we are talking, the self we are talking about, is absolutely different from the self that all other people are talking about. Now, because I have come across people who I have tried to connect them to the higher frequency, and because of that elusive, deceptive presentation of what that self is, they try to find out, is that all? And I say, what else do you expect? You get it? Because they have been mistutored and misinformed, and because of that misinformation, they are having vain imagination and misunderstanding of what this whole thing is all about. So today, I want us to talk about the self, how it looks like, and its true nature. And you realize it's so simple. It is not as complicated, as difficult, and as clumsy as people have put it. So today we are going to talk about the self, the real self we are talking about, not the elusive self people talk about. So I've tried to distinguish between the self and then the elusive self. Now, in order for us to get a full scope of what I'm talking about, we must I'll look at it from a more Christian perspective, because as I always say, I'm a Christian, so I look at it from a more Christian and a biblical perspective, but we'll be considering other texts too, in addition to our discussion. Who is man? That's the first question. Or what is man? You see, man is a tripartite being, as I told you before. We have body, we have soul, and we have spirit. Now, with this tripartite nature, our constitution is formed. And I told you that when we talk about the body, it's not necessarily this physical matter. We are talking about the five senses, the emotion, and the mind, all constitute the personality. The lower it becomes, the more dense it becomes. When it becomes more dense, it's what we describe as the physical matter. And as it gets higher vibrational frequency, it becomes more invisible, and that becomes mind, emotions, and all other things. All constitute your lower personality. Now, and then we have the self itself. Now, the self is the living soul, or your true nature, your individualized essence of the divine essence, where that separation from that divine source was made. In order for that separation, though, so the self we are talking about is divine and originally a part of the absolute essence or the absolute unit that was disintegrated or separated in order to have certain experiences, using the mind, the emotions, and then the body as a vehicle and as a tool in order to have that experience. So that is a separation. So I want you to understand the separation. The spirit is divine nature from which the self separated, and the self separated and adopted the mind, the emotions, and the senses as a vehicle in order to have the necessary experiences that they want to experience. So actually, the self is in this world not to acquire anything material. There are only two things the self is in this world to acquire, and that is experience and maturity. Maturity in terms of knowledge. So we are in this world to have experience, to experience certain dimensions of knowledge. And that experience of knowledge, or that experience of dimension of knowledge, gives us what we call maturity. Waiting areas. This is the only reason why we are in this world. And this material plane is like a cosmic school. It's like a spiritual school, where the self comes to study and to learn and to enhance its experiences in order to better its nature and to make it more complete and more whole, so that it can fit back into the divine essence. So the soul, which is what we call the soul, the self, the living soul, is something that is divine in a miniaturized form, in a much smaller form. So other people abbreviated the soul to be self-obliged ubiquitous light. So the self you are talking about, actually it is light. You are a light being. And other religions call it the spark within man, within the physical essence. That is the divine spark. And the spark is still a light. So the self we are talking about, actually it is light. And this is the constitution of the real self. And the day you exit the body, you understand that you are an embodiment of light, an embodiment of love. You are formless. You have no form, you have no shape, you are limitless. So the self we are talking about, it is light. And the vehicle that carries this light, this intelligence, is a sound energy. And this light and sound energy is a constitution of that divine essence we call God. So, in order to be able to realize the self, you must be able to see your divine nature, which is light, and then the vibrational frequency that carries this divine essence, which is light, and that vibrational frequency, it's sound, because sound resonates and is the energy that carries that intelligence, that light energy, which is the real self, back to its source and fits into the divine source, the divine light, and then ultimately into the void. So when you read the book of Genesis chapter 1, today I'm going to do a little bit of reading. When you read Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, and it said, "And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness." So man was created in two forms. Man has a nature, an attribute of image, and an attribute of likeness. These are the two things that constitute man. "And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowls of the air, and over the cattle and over all the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." So man was created in the image and likeness of his creator. The question is, what is this image and what is this likeness of that creator? This is what we need to understand. Because the real man that we are talking about is an image and has a likeness. And that image and likeness constitute what we call the man, which is the self. When the Bible was talking about the man, it was talking about the self. Now, when you read chapter 2, verse 7, Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, it says that, "And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul." So that man, with that essence energy sent into him, he became a living soul. So actually, we are living souls and not human beings. Because when you begin to operate at the level of personality and below, you are classified as a human being. But when you begin to operate within the essence of the self, you are a soul. You are not a man. You are no more physical. You are no more a physical being, but a non-physical being, which is a soul. Self-obliged, ubiquitous light. That is who you truly are. That is the self. And that self is light. And the light is carried with an energy called the sound energy. This is our true attribute. This is our true nature. So the image of God we are talking about is the sound energy of God. And that attribute and that likeness of attribute is the light. So man was created in the form of sound energy with the attribute of light. And that image, which is the attribute of sound, is love. And that likeness is truth. So we're created in the image of love with the likeness of truth. This is our true nature. When we transcend the personality, this is our true nature. And that is why everybody wants to be loved. And everybody wants somebody for him or her to love. And everybody wants to be told the truth. And everybody feels okay and feels right when he or she speaks the truth. To the extent that if that person does not speak the truth, even if nobody knows about it, he feels guilty within himself, because that self is a nature of truth. So anything you do contrary to that nature, that self becomes agitated within the personality. But that self is truth, which is light. And that self is love, which is the sound energy. And these are the attributes of it. So when somebody is talking about self-realization, realizing yourself, ask the person, what is this self-realization? That self, what are you to realize with that self? When you realize that self, what is it? How does it look like? And I'm telling you, when you realize that self, you realize it in the form of light, and you realize it in the form of sound. Now, when a person tells you that, okay, or when you realize it, it is light and it is sound, ask the person, can you make me experience that light and experience that sound in this lifetime? But when a person has journeyed and has traveled the path, and he or herself has been able to attain that self, which is the light and sound energy, into enlightenment, he should be able to make you have that experience. So the self itself is light, and that is why in the whole of human history, anybody that experiences the bigger self, which we call God, experiences that self in the form of light or in the form of sound. When you pick all the holy scriptures, anybody that experiences the what we call the macrocosm, because we are the microcosm, which is the smaller self, which is the smaller God, and the bigger self, which is the bigger God. Anybody that experiences the macrocosm, experience that macrocosm in the form of light and sound. And we are a nature of that macrocosm in a smaller form. So then we are the micro, M-I-C-R-O, the micro form. And the bigger self is the macro form, M-A-C-R-O, macro. And anybody who, I repeat, anybody that has ever experienced the macro form, experience that macro energy in the form of sound and in the radiation of light. So if that nature was sent into us through the breath, which Bible calls it the breath of life, then that energy, that activated, that consciousness that will become a living soul, that energy is light and that energy is sound. So we are sound energy and light energy in the microform, in a small form. That's why when you read the Bible, it says that for the power of God, which is the macro energy, will be at work according to his power, which is at work in you. Because there's a part of that macro energy which is embedded within us that gives us the life active and then the creative energy. So this is all about. And there is nothing beyond this energy. There's nothing beyond this knowledge. And from this source, all other things comes into manifestation. From this source, all other things are affected, including the elements, including the 4 elements. So we need to put a distinctional line between transcendental knowledge and mystical knowledge. Because most of the things we are calling the self and all those has to do with the personality and mystical tendencies, mystical knowledge, magical and miraculous knowledge. And that has nothing to do with self-realization or self-elevation or salvation. So to have self-elevation and salvation, you must realize that divine light and must realize that divine sound energy of yours. When you read the book of Psalms, let's read Psalm 89. There is Psalm 89, verse 13 to 15. It says that thou hast a mighty arm, strong is thy hand, and high is thy right hand. Justice and judgment are the habitation of thy throne. Mercy and truth shall go before thy face. 15. It says that blessed is the people that know the joyful sound. They shall walk, O Lord, in the light of thy countenance. So this is David having his own experience with the divine energy. And he experienced the divine energy in the form of sound and in the form of light. And he's telling you that anybody that would hear that joyful sound of God, that person will walk in the light of God's countenance, because this is the image in which the self is. So self-realization is being able to hear that divine sound from within and not from without, and be able to see the divine light from within and not from without. I know there are other spiritual groups that teaches the light and sound energy, and what they do is that they will ring a bell and they will ask you to follow the sound of the bell. Others will ask you to light a candle and then focus on the light of the candle. All these things are external, but the true self-realization, the true realization of that self-nature has nothing to do with external issues. We are talking about experiences. We are not talking about what people said, what you have heard, what the book is saying, or what the tape is saying, or what the video is saying. The real realization has nothing to do with physical. It has nothing to do with herbs. It has nothing to do with candles. It has nothing to do with listening to any sound, any frequency, listening to any mantra or sound. No. That self-realization is purely an internal spiritual activity. And this is the only source of realization. So all people in all generations who have experienced the divine nature from within themselves express that realization in the form of light and in the form of sound. And this is the truth that we need to find. And there's no truth beyond this truth. You may have all these magical tendencies, get some elementals, get some dwarfs to do some stuff for you, have some knowledge about some herbs, you put this herb and herb together, it can make this, you put that. But no herb can give you self-realization, because the level and consciousness of the herbs, they are too low to even talk about the self. Well, on earth yes, herbs, what they do is can purify your aura. Those are some of the things the herbs can do. Some of these vibration frequencies, they can purify your aura, gives you certain positive vibrational frequencies, so that at the level of personality you can resonate, so that external energy, external cause energy cannot penetrate your space. Those things are there, and we give people assistances in those areas. But I just wanted to make it clear, and I always keep telling anybody that look, all these things, they are not the way to that realization. The way to that realization is harnessing that light and sound energy, which is always resonating within yourself. It has always been with you, and that is who you truly are. And it is in that state that you begin to experience that unfoldment of infinity within yourself. And in that state, realize that everything has been about you, and everything in this manifest creation is about you. You have never been separated from the divine essence. And that divine has never been at a place called heaven that you need to pray to. That you have always been one and within that divine essence. But the separation that we experience, the separation that we have, comes from the intellect, the mind. Because the mind gives us a level of separation. Because the mind always wants to connect to the lower personality, and then wants to deal with the emotions, and wants to deal with the senses. And tries to block that bridge so that the self itself can control the senses and the emotions. And the self itself must control the mind. The mind, the emotions, the senses, they are all supposed to be subservient to the self, because the self is the real master. The self is the real you. And it's a little complicated, it's a bit simple. When you take your time to listen to me, you understand it. So the self, which is the real you, and the mind, the emotions, and the senses, that are tools that's supposed to serve you, which is the self, now has become the master. And so all this while, the self has been dormant. That's why we call it awakening. Because the self has been dormant. It's more or less, let's use the word sleeping. Even though sleeping, he's still the source of sustenance to the lower personality. The lower personality assumes its force of existence from the self, but suppressed. It's like, let me give you a scenario. It's like you having a father, and your father is the real deal, is the real king, and is the real ruler, and all the money and everything is there, but the father has been kept in the background, and the whole palace is running, and then they are spending money, and everything is going on, and nobody, and it's like the king is quiet in the palace, and the king is not allowed to speak, and maybe there's a coup d'etat, the man is coup d'etat, so his son has taken over the palace without the consent and the permission of the king, and the king is kept in one corner. Yet everything which is running the palace is coming from the king, but the king is quiet in his own palace. That's how it has become. So the self is the real king, and he's supposed to be the ruler. But the mind, which is a tool that the self has to use, now has made a coup d'etat on the self, and is now controlling the emotions and the senses, and they are using the energy of the self and doing what they want to do. Yet the real deal, the real thing is the self. And the day the king will awaken, the day the king will resurrect, then you see that the mind, who has made coup d'etat, is nobody. Absolutely, he doesn't know anything. And this is where we are missing the mark. And this is where a lot of people who call themselves spiritual teachers and spiritual masters talk about it. And then they feel that is the ultimate. And they make people believe that that is the ultimate. I can tell you on authority, metaphysics is not the ultimate of spirituality. I can tell you on authority, astrology is not the ultimate of spirituality. I can tell you on authority, numerology is not the ultimate of spirituality. I can tell you on authority, herbal science, herbology, or herbal practice, it is not the ultimate of spirituality. I am not saying it is not good. Get me right. I am not saying it is not good. It is part, but the point is that it is lower. Whoever teaches it should not teach it and present it as the ultimate. This is what I'm trying to say. Because astrology is dependent on the movement of the stars, and all the stars and everything were created. They are all creatures. The herbs are creatures. Numerology, which are numbers, were also created. But there's something that was never created, which is the self. The self was sent, was transmitted into existence from the divine essence. And that divine essence has never been created. And that self is a part of that divine essence. So there's nothing within manifest creation, and there's no intelligence, there's no knowledge within manifest creation which is greater and higher than the self. And this is the only thing I want to establish. I'm not saying that they are not good. They are very good. Sometimes I use the herbs. Sometimes I use herbs to do soap. I use herbs to do oils and all those things. They are good. But I will not present it as the ultimate to anybody, because I know it is not. But growing up, you need it. Until you get to that level where you can now assess the self frequency and self vibration, you need it. But the truth of the matter is that they are not the ultimate. So when somebody tells you this is spirituality, this is the ultimate, I'm telling you that it is not true. There are tools that the Creator has given to us within manifest creation as we exist, and the self try to unfold itself, to experience itself, and to rediscover itself and go back to its source. There are tools they need to, it can be used. But unfortunately, our minds has been programmed to believe that it's the ultimate. But the truth of the matter is that it's not the ultimate. The only ultimate energy within manifest creation is the energy of the light and the energy of the sound. And these two energies are the only thing that culminate to our ultimate transcending. Because you become awakened, you ascend, and then you transcend. These are the 3 levels. So conscious awakening is just the class 1 of spirituality. So when you are awakening your consciousness, I feel now about spirituality. I say, when you are awakening your consciousness, you have not begun spirituality. Because consciousness, when we call consciousness, it is the culmination of all the realms of limits. Because within manifest creation, we operate in what we call the realms of limits. Everything operates within limits. So, and it is within the realms of limit that we have form or limitations. And so when all the realms, you're able to transcend all the realms of limits within manifest creation, you become awakened to the reality. Hey, so if this is what it is, that is what we call awakening or conscious awakening. You become awakened to the actualities of existence. But until you're able to break the barriers of limitations, you are still under the hold of the elemental forces. So when you read some book of Galatians, it says that for before you are the influence of the elemental forces that control this world or that rule this world. So for before, that means I guess your time that you go beyond the elemental influences. And when you're able to transcend the elemental influences, that is what we call conscious awakening. Then that is the beginning of spirituality. Then when you become awoken consciously, then you begin your ascension. Then the ascension is you begin to develop. Then when you get to the level when you arrive into the higher unit, we call it you transcend. That means I say other form ladder CEO and a top basement in all and another form now what's put me sorry, that is awakening. When you begin to climb the ladder, that is your ascension. When you're able to land at the first floor, that is your transcendence. You have transcended all the realms of limits and you have landed, and that is then you begin your enlightenment process. So enlightenment itself is the beginning of entering into the real infinite nature of the source. So this is what the self is truly about. The self is nothing but light. For the self is a part of the bigger self, which is God. For we were created in the image and likeness of God. That God we were created from is light. That is the essence we'll get to. There's a higher self, and the higher part of it that we'll treat that one later on, because I don't want to meddle with this. It may confuse you. So that God, the creator we manifest from, is light. And so we are embodiment of that light. We are a product of that light. So we also light in a smaller form. When you transcend and emerge back to the source, we should be able to emerge back to the source perfectly. So all that we are talking about with regards to the self is light. And the day you have your connection and you're able to go inside and then you're able to see the self, you see the self, boom, as a bright light. A very beautiful light. So beautiful that you wouldn't like to leave that light. And you realize that there's no separation between you and that light. You've always been that light. And before, just a step to seeing that light, I will use the word see, because in that scope, there's nothing like seeing, because it is you manifesting yourself. But I'll use the word see because before you transcend to have that experience, you go beyond your mind. You get separated from your mind. You get separated absolutely from your mind. And I remember the first time I had that experience, my mind, I was one piece and my mind was one piece, and my mind was asking me, where am I going? This, I'm talking about real life, my own experience. My mind was asking, where are you going? But you've always been with me, and I told her, I'm not you. Then, boom, the explosion was, and then when I had it, I saw that explosion, boom, like this. It was so beautiful, so beautiful. And I was not separated from that experience. Though the lower personality was admiring that experience, but the real self is that experience. And it was so beautiful. It's the most beautiful thing. I use the word beautiful because the lower personality was having the experience that I have. When I came to the body, it was the most marvelous thing, and I cannot explain how that feeling looks like up to today. The most beautiful experience I ever had. And the day you have that experience, everything about you changes, including your DNA. Everything about you changes. Your intelligence changes, your emotion changes, your clarity changes. Everything about you changes. That's what the Bible said. Nobody can see God and still be the same. And the reason why people are struggling with sin, people are struggling with all sort of covetousness, lasciviousness, all the works of the flesh, people are struggling with it because it is not an effort of the body. The body can't do it. It is an act of grace. It's purely an act of grace. That's what the Bible said, that for your righteousness is like filthy rag before God. But the church doesn't explain it well. That your self-effort of trying to be it, you cannot attain it. It is an act of grace that comes from within, not from without. Because all your effort of trying not to be covetous, trying not to be fornicator, trying not to be adulterous and all those things, it's a physical thing you are trying to do it. So it's an external thing you are doing. But actually, the purity comes from within. And the day you experience that self, which is that divine essence of light, and then the more you begin to meditate in that divine essence of life, you begin to have more clarity. Your life becomes more shaped. And you do everything effortless. You are effortless with sin. You don't struggle to get over sin. You don't struggle to get over all those social vices. It's not a problem. It's not. You see, everything about you changing, including your DNA. Last week I was telling, we had an issue, and I was telling my wife that, hey, I was telling my wife that I am past spirituality is something, Papa, because I knew how I was, and the thing which is happening, I won't tolerate it for even 1 second. So I was telling my wife in the car, hey, I'm past spirituality is something, Papa, because me and I was praising myself. Say me and my sister, because I know that what is happening, I won't tolerate it. But this time around, I'm the one who is rather giving the people the patience of when you have a trainer. It's all about yourself, and whether you do it or you don't do it, everything in the universe is about you. So just play alongside with it. But in normal circumstances, in my old form, I wouldn't tolerate for a second. And that is how spirituality is like. When you realize that divine light of it, everything about you changes. When Moses went to Mount Sinai and then realized God and all those things, when he came back, he said that for nobody can see God and be the same. But the scripture didn't render it so well. And he said that for now I know God is light, and this light dwells in all men. And when he went for the second time, when the Ten Commandments, they said his face was shining to the sense that the people couldn't look at his face. So he has to cover his face with a veil. And so nobody can see God and be the same. When we talk about God, we're talking about light. It's not an entity sitting in the sky with a long hair, with a magic wand, looking for people in iniquity to judge and to condemn people. We are talking about divine love, divine light, divine intelligence. That light is intelligence, and that sound is love. The light is intelligence, and the sound is love. This is what we are talking about, and that is what you are constituted of. That is your composition. So you must understand it. That when we're talking about the self, well, maybe other thing they're talking about, I can tell you, and I'm telling you that when I'm listening to them, because I've been into that lower personality development before that higher self-realization thing. So when I listen to people talking about themselves, what I know without doubt is they're talking about the lower personality. Without doubt. They're talking about the lower personality. Because when you look at the way they talk about it and the way they describe, they themselves need the true self-realization, need to realize that divine light within themselves. Because this is a light you must always be able to connect. I remember let me give a scenario. There was a time, it appears that I stayed for a very long time that I was not meditating. So I thought I've lost that self-realization thing. So I decided that now I want to go through the whole process because of wanting to know myself again. So I set a day that I set some couple of days that I wanted to meditate. That period, a week period, 7-day period, I wouldn't go out, just meditate, eat, sleep, just to. Well, I thought I've lost that self because I've stayed away from meditation for several months. The first day I sit down to meditate, and then I plug all the necessary things. I did all that I need to do, and I started meditating. Then the intuition came. But how many times do you know yourself? You know yourself just once. You can't know yourself over and over again. When you know yourself, you've known yourself. It's finished. As soon as I sat down and I positioned myself and I connected myself and I began to focus and then meditate, then the words came. How many times do you know something? Let's say for instance, when I know my friend Abraham, I know him only once. I don't go around, so I want to know Abraham again. The day you know Abraham, you've known him and it's forever. Anywhere you see Abraham you know him. You don't rediscover and renew Abraham every day. Just like we have to reaccept Jesus Christ every day now and then. No, it's not there. That's not like that. You just do it once and for all. So as soon as I sat and told her, how many times do you know yourself? You know yourself just once, right? Nobody has told me. You are it, you have attained it, you are it. Whether you do it, you don't meditate, you are it. Then I just woke up, I couldn't continue my meditation no more. This is what we are talking about. So that self is light. Now we are going to go to, in order to buttress my point, I want us to go to a couple of scriptures to buttress the point of that light and sound energy, which constitute our personality, which constitute the divine energy from which we were created, from which we emanated and inhabited this physical body, the physical body which called the senses, and then the mind and the emotions. And you are using it as a vehicle to express ourselves. Now, when we read 1 John chapter 1 verse 5, 1 John chapter 1 verse 5. So I'll be giving the scripture. 1 John chapter 1 verse 5. 1 John 1 5. 1 John chapter 1 verse 5. It says that, I'll start from verse 4. It says that, and these things write we unto you, that your joy may be full. Verse 5. This then is the message which we have heard of him. So realize that John was saying something that he himself has never experienced. He said he has heard it of him. He said, then this is the message which we have heard of him and declares unto you. So John is telling something he has also heard. So there are a lot of people who are talking about self-realization that they have heard, but they have not experienced it. And John also makes it clear that this message which we have heard of him, and we also declare unto you that God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. So John heard that God is light, and that thing he heard is saying it. And I'm telling you that light, you can experience it because you are created in that likeness of that light, with that image of love. Because remember, the scripture also talks about God is love. So there are people who have heard and they are trying to talk about it. But we are telling you that we have experienced it, and you can also experience it in this lifetime. Anybody who talks about the light of God and the sound of God, and that you are created in the image and likeness of that light and sound, and cannot make you prove it, forget it. Don't waste your time following that person, because he's going to waste your time, because he himself or herself has not realized it. Now, let's take another scripture. John chapter 3 verse 21. 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 This is Jesus, where he said it is written in red. And I'm told that when all Jesus Christ's words is inscribed in red pigmentation. John 3:21. But let's take from verse 20. It said that for everyone that doeth evil hateth the light. Anyone that doeth evil hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved. But he that doeth truth cometh to the light, that his deeds may be made manifest, that they are wrought in God. So whoever walketh in truth findeth the light. Whoever walketh in truth findeth the light. So the truth takes you to the light. So it's all about looking and finding for the light.